Hey, this is Mark Goldberg from Mark Vlogs Watches, and I have a special treat for you today on this video. We're going to review one of my favoriteest watches ever. One of my most favorite watches ever. And the funny thing is that, oh, look, I got this incredible farmer's tan going on here. This is what happens when you're not wearing your usual t-shirt and you're a dog, I'm a dog farmer, guys. I'm a dog trainer, but I feel like a farmer. Anyway, I'm not much in favor hang on. Before we get into this video, let's roll some credits. Welcome back, and now that we're back, let's do a quick wristwatch check. It's the watch in question. It's the Omega Flightmaster. Let's finish the credits. Okay, so now we're really back. Anyway, you know, some of my friends really love vintage watches, and I'm just not crazy about them at all. This is starting to look a little sexy here, guys. Sorry. I don't usually like vintage watches. Why? Because they're usually dinky and small. But let's get into the meat and potatoes of the Omega Flightmaster, which is a big, chunky, manly he-man of a behemoth. Behemoth? Anyway, it's a big sucker. Let's talk about it. The Omega Flightmaster. Well, here we have the Omega Flightmaster. This is a very large watch. It is a 44 millimeter across watch. And it's cool as hell. This line of watches was first introduced in 1969 by Omega as an aviation watch, and it was kind of, history suggests that it was kind of popular with Vietnam era pilots. Okay. Now, it comes on a stainless steel bracelet, but mine is broken. Actually, I just need a link, or a half link really, and I'll have it repaired. But I put it on this Hirsch Buffalo strap for the time being, and I like it very much, so that's working nicely. But at first glance, this is a really complicated watch. But as we work our way through it, I think you'll see that there is some really good organization to it. So let's start with the obvious thing, which is all the gobbledygook on the sides. What you're going to see is 3 crowns. That's 1 and 2. And here's the 3rd crown right here. And then these guys are pushers. So let's start with the pushers. The pushers operate a chronograph. You just grab a pen here real quick. And the chronograph, of course, uses this second hands right here. That measures the seconds when you're running the chronograph, which I'll start it up for you in a second. This subdial here, by the way, notice there's texture to the subdial. It's sort of like a pie plate. Right here, the edge, the outer edge, it's angled. So there's kind of like a dealing with some glare here, but there's some 3D effect there that you can see. Actually, you can notice it even a little better on that side right now. But all 3 of these subdials have texture and an angled ring inside as though it were a chapter ring. Gives some dimension and depth to the watch. Now, again, this is a pretty busy looking dial, but there is tremendous organization to it. And once you understand this watch, it's really, really easy to read and use. Okay, so first we have our minutes subdial here. That registers up to 30 minutes. This is our hour subdial here. So once we've clicked over into the 30 minutes, it'll register a half an hour, and then an hour, and then 2 hours, and then 3. You can time up to a 12-hour event on the chronograph. So I'm going to go ahead and start it. By the way, this is a manual wind, and it is an Omega movement. It is 901 is the movement. You can see all those little tiny itty-bitty hashtags. Each second is divided into fifths. And when we go ahead and stop the chrono, it's a little hard for me to show you on camera, but that's lining up with a hash mark so that we can actually determine minutes and fractions of seconds and fractions of a second. Anyway, I'm going to stop this and return it. That's what the chronograph is for. Honestly, I actually never used the chronograph feature. Of any watch, and I own several. It's just that it's an extremely cool complication, so I really do admire it. By the way, we have a excuse me, a matte, or it's kind of like it almost looks bead blasted finish to the case here. And then there's a couple little beveled edges which have some polish to them, like right here. You can see some high polish right there. Okay, so let's look at this, this crown right here. What that is moving is that is an internal bidirectional timing bezel. I don't want to call it a dive bezel, but it's very similar to a dive bezel. The difference, of course, being that you can't lock it down, and it is unidirectional, excuse me, not bidirectional. And that's because although this watch originally came with 180, geez, guys, I can't remember if it's meters or feet. I'll put it in the, I'll add a little note here of some text. It's either 180 feet, I think it's 180 feet, but I'll let you know, of water resistance. So it has some water resistance, although this particular watch was manufactured in 1971, so I don't put it in water. But you can time an event using that crown. That is extremely handy. Sorry, it's this one here, this lower one. Now, it's extremely handy, but it's a little bit loose. This watch hasn't probably been serviced in a long time, so it doesn't take much jiggling of that crown to start altering the, the bezel. And actually, that kind of reminds me of the only negative that I can tell you, for me anyway, about this particular watch, and that is the I really probably use the markings on the bezel more than anything else to read off the time. Like, I know that it's 10:03 based on where the hash marks and the numbers are, and it just sort of confuses my tired old brain if I'm using this to time something, or if it just happens to go off. I look at this and my brain wants to read that number, and I have to remind myself to ignore that number and just go with the analog version of the time, which it's it's still 10:03 or whatever it is. But that is the only little thing that sometimes confuses me a little. So, and of course, I'm anal like the rest of you are with our OCD at wanting to keep that always correctly in place. Okay, so that's what that is. These guys here are chrono pushers, just the way you would think. Originally, by the way, they still have their color on them. I didn't even realize that. Yellow and red. Okay, they're both yellow and red. And you can see that this one is red and yellow, and that one is yellow and red, just to distinguish between their functionality. And this is a signed crown, as you can see there. Really nice. Now, that brings into question, the only thing we haven't talked about then is this upper crown here. Now, notice that little spot of blue coming right off the tip of the hour hand. Actually, there are two hour hands because this is a dual time zone watch. So if I turn this crown downward, I can adjust that second hour hand anywhere I want it to be. So I've just flipped it 2 hours ahead right now, and so it's showing 12:04, right? 10:04 in my primary time zone with the white hour hand, and a couple of hours later. Now, mind you, you have to remember your AMs and your PMs. It's not a GMT 24-hour watch, but it is very neat if you want to track two time zones and you can remember the AM and the PM of it. So generally speaking, when I'm not traveling, I just keep that tucked right behind the actual hour hand, and then I just get that little splash of blue. Let me finish adjusting that. There we go. Gives me that little tiny splash of blue as a tip of my hour hand, but it's not in the way. But it's super handy when you want it. It's just that it will confuse the eye if you're not expecting it or needing it to be there. So I'm just going to tuck it away one more time. Now, the subdial right here, that subdial, this is going to bug me. I didn't line it up very well, so I'm looking at it on camera there, a little better. This subdial right here obviously is the moving seconds dial. And this is the second iteration, I believe, of the Flightmaster. The first one just gave you a 24-hour dial there, so that it told you what the 24-hour or military time was for your primary time zone. And that was a green subdial, which added a really nice splash of color to this watch. And I love the way it looks even more than I love this dial. The problem is that there is no moving second hand on that watch, and you need to run the chronograph in order to realize if your watch is running or not. And I don't like running the chronograph constantly, so I like a running seconds hand. And that's why I bought this iteration. Now on the case back, mine is really bad. This is not a great example of this watch. So the outline of this is almost impossible to see. I can see it with the naked eye, but I can tell you the camera's not going to pick it up at all. But there should be a jet airplane on here, and it should say Flightmaster. This, in fact, this might even be a replacement case back. I'm not entirely certain that this is the actual case back. It is like a turtle shell case. You can see that there's this great big space under here, and that's hiding the 22 millimeter pin spacebar right there, and then another one here. It looks really good on this leather. This is a buffalo. It looks really good on this, I think. However, I really dig its original stainless steel bracelet, but I'm going to have to put a little work into getting that thing fixed. These things are running anywhere between $2,500 and $3,500 depending on how decent your example. This was at the low end. I think I spent on eBay maybe $2,200 or $2,300 on this, but I couldn't be happier. I'll give you a quick peek at it on the wrist. It's a large watch, and that really is a good thing for me because I like wrist presence, and one of the things that really deters me from a lot of vintage watches is how tiny they are. And this one is a monster. It's big, it's thick, it's rugged, yet it's extremely easy to use. This was a computer before there were computers. Anyway, this is Mark Goldberg from Mark Vlogs Watches. Please squish the like and subscribe buttons so we can do this again. And thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the Omega Flightmaster.